Hello, and welcome to Boring History for Sleep. Tonight, we turn our attention to an object of such profound ubiquity that it has become nearly invisible. Consider for a moment the humble shopping basket. We lift it from its stack near the entrance of a store, its plastic handles clicking softly as they meet. We feel its familiar, lightweight heft, the slight texture of its molded surfaces. Every basket in the stack is identical to the one above and below it, a perfect clone designed to nest with whisper-quiet precision. They are a constant, a given, in the landscape of modern retail. But this uniformity, this perfect system of stacking and carrying, was not a given. It was the result of a slow, quiet, and decades-long evolution. To truly understand how this simple object achieved such a quiet, universal form, we must journey back to a time before its existence was a given, and explore the incremental standardization of its design. Our story begins not with the basket itself, but in the retail environment that would eventually demand its creation. Before the 1930s and 1940s, the American grocery store or general store operated on a fundamentally different principle than the one we know today. The experience was not one of self-service, but of counter-service. A shopper would enter the establishment, often with a prepared list, and approach a long wooden or marble counter. Behind this counter stood the grocer, or a number of clerks, who were the gatekeepers of the merchandise. The goods themselves were not openly displayed for customers to handle. Instead, they were arranged on high shelves, in barrels, in bins, or in glass-fronted cabinets, all behind the protective barrier of the counter. The customer would hand their list to the clerk, or recite the items they needed one by one. The clerk would then embark on a journey through the store's inventory, retrieving each item. A pound of flour would be scooped from a barrel and weighed. A length of sausage would be cut from a link. Canned goods would be plucked from high shelves, using long-handled grabbers. Each item was a transaction, a dialogue between the customer and the clerk. The process was personal, but it was also slow and inefficient. The speed of the entire store was limited by the number of clerks available and how quickly they could move. The customer was a passive participant, waiting patiently as their order was assembled. There was no need for a customer to carry anything until the very end, when the clerk had gathered, wrapped, and tallied the entire order. The container for this final purchase was typically a paper sack, a cloth bag the customer brought from home, or perhaps a cardboard box if the order was large. The idea of a customer navigating the store aisles independently, selecting their own goods, was a foreign concept. The store's layout, its staffing, and its entire operational logic were built around the clerk as the central actor. This model began to face challenges with the rise of chain stores and the increasing pace of modern life in the early 20th century. Visionary retailers began to question the efficiency of the counter-service model. One of the most famous pioneers of the self-service concept was Clarence Saunders, who opened the first Piggly Wiggly store in Memphis, Tennessee, in 1916. Saunders's innovation was radical for its time. He turned the grocery store into a maze, with a designated entrance and exit, and forced customers to walk past all of the store's merchandise. The goods were placed on open, accessible shelves, each clearly marked with a price. Customers were expected to select the items themselves. This was a revolutionary shift in the psychology and logistics of shopping. It empowered the customer, but it also created a new problem. If a customer was to wander the aisles and select their own goods, what were they to carry them in? The initial solution was rudimentary. Piggly Wiggly provided customers with simple wooden trays or wicker baskets. These early containers were a step in the right direction, but they were far from perfect. They were often heavy, awkward to carry, and had limited capacity. A customer could only purchase as much as they could comfortably hold in their arms, or in a small, cumbersome basket. This physical limitation placed an artificial cap on the total sales per customer. A shopper might see more items they wished to buy, but if their basket was full or too heavy, they would simply stop shopping. The potential of the self-service model was being held back by a container problem. This brings us to the parallel and deeply intertwined story of the shopping cart. In 1937, Sylvan Goldman, the owner of the Humpty Dumpty supermarket chain in Oklahoma, observed this very problem. He saw his customers abandoning potential purchases because their wicker baskets were full. He wanted a way for them to buy more. His first idea was to have store clerks carry a second basket for customers, but this was rejected. Then, one evening in his office, he had a moment of inspiration while looking at a simple wooden folding chair. He imagined a chair with two seats, one above the other. On the top seat, he could place a basket, on the bottom seat, another basket, and on the legs, he could attach wheels. With the help of a handyman named Fred Young, Goldman constructed the first prototype. It was a clumsy affair made from a folding chair, 4 caster wheels, and 2 wire baskets attached with metal wire. It was not elegant, but it worked. Goldman and Young refined the design, creating a collapsible metal frame that could hold the baskets. He called it the folding basket carrier. Despite the obvious utility of the invention, customers were initially resistant. Men felt it was effeminate to push a baby buggy, and women felt it suggested they were too weak to carry a basket. To overcome this, Goldman hired models of both sexes to walk around his stores pushing the new carts, demonstrating their use and making them seem fashionable and desirable. The strategy worked. The shopping cart was a success, and it fundamentally changed the scale of grocery shopping. It allowed customers to purchase far more than they ever could before, paving the way for the large-scale supermarkets that would come to dominate the post-war American landscape. The invention and adoption of the shopping cart is crucial to our story because it established the principle of a store-provided, reusable container designed for the customer's convenience. The handheld shopping basket, our primary subject, can be seen as the smaller, more nimble cousin of the shopping cart. It served a different, but equally important purpose. Not every shopping trip required a large wheeled cart. For a quick trip to pick up just a few items, a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, a can of soup, a large cart was overkill. The handbasket was the solution for these smaller, more frequent shopping excursions, the kind that would become increasingly common with the rise of convenience stores and express checkout lanes. So in the 1940s, as the self-service model spread across the nation, the need for a standardized, efficient handbasket became more apparent. The early wicker and wood baskets of the Piggly Wiggly era were clearly inadequate for the new, modern supermarket. They were fragile, difficult to clean, and splintered easily. The first major technological leap for the handbasket was the adoption of wire construction, mirroring the development of the shopping cart. These early wire baskets of the 1940s and early 1950s were products of a utilitarian, post-war mindset. They were typically constructed from heavy-gauge steel wire, which was either zinc-plated or chrome-plated to resist rust and corrosion. The construction was simple and robust. A grid of intersecting wires formed the bottom and the 4 sides of the basket. The wires were joined at each intersection by spot welding, a process that uses electrical current to fuse the metal points together. The top rim of the basket was usually formed from a thicker, solid steel rod, providing rigidity and a smooth edge. The handles on these first-generation wire baskets were also very simple. Most often, they consisted of a single, fixed handle made from the same thick steel rod as the rim. It would arc over the top of the basket, welded securely to the middle of the 2 longer sides. This design was strong, but it presented a significant problem, a problem that would occupy the minds of basket designers for years to come: the problem of stacking, or more accurately, nesting. A basket with a fixed, overarching handle cannot be nested. One basket cannot be placed inside another. This meant that when not in use, these baskets had to be stored side by side or stacked precariously on top of one another like clumsy blocks. For a store that might have hundreds of these baskets for its customers, this created a massive storage issue. A stack of 100 non-nesting baskets would take up an enormous amount of valuable floor space near the entrance of the store. The inefficiency was palpable. It was a logistical headache for store managers and an untidy sight for customers. The search for a solution to the stacking problem became the primary driver of innovation in shopping basket design for the next decade. The initial attempts to solve this problem were incremental. Designers first addressed the shape of the basket's body, a perfect rectangle, a simple box, is impossible to nest. To allow one basket to slide into another, the sides needed to be sloped. Designers began to taper the walls of the wire baskets, making the bottom of the basket slightly smaller in length and width than the top opening. This slight, almost imperceptible angle was a critical geometric breakthrough. It allowed the body of one basket to slide partway into the body of another, saving a significant amount of horizontal space. However, the fixed handle remained a barrier to a truly efficient system. The definitive solution to the handle problem arrived in the 1950s, and it was the invention of the swinging or folding handle. This was a transformative moment in the history of the shopping basket. Instead of a single fixed handle welded to the frame, the new design featured one or two handles attached to the rim via pivot points. This allowed the handles to swing out of the way, folding down along the inside or outside of the basket's rim. Let's examine the mechanics of this innovation in detail. The most common design involved two U-shaped handles, each made of steel wire. One handle was attached to each of the long sides of the basket. The attachment point was not a rigid weld, but a simple pivot. Often, the end of the handle wire was looped around the top rim wire, creating a hinge. When a customer picked up the basket, they would grasp both handles, which would swing up and meet in the middle, forming a comfortable grip. Small metal stoppers were often welded onto the basket's rim to prevent the handles from swinging past the vertical position, ensuring they remained upright and easy to hold. When the basket was not in use, these handles could be folded down, clearing the top opening completely. With the handles out of the way and the sides of the basket tapered, one basket could now slide deeply and neatly into the one below it. This was the birth of the truly stackable or nestable basket. A stack of 100 nesting baskets would now take up only slightly more floor space than a single basket, with the total height being the only significant dimension. This innovation, pioneered by companies like the Telescope Folding Furniture Company of New York, a company that, true to its name, had expertise in creating strong, collapsible metal structures, revolutionized the storage and management of shopping baskets in retail environments. Throughout the 1950s and into the early 1960s, this wire basket design was refined. Manufacturers experimented with different gauges of wire to find the optimal balance between strength and weight. They improved the plating processes to make the baskets more resistant to rust and easier to clean. Some designs incorporated a smaller mesh grid on the bottom to prevent smaller items from falling through. The handles were sometimes coated in a thin layer of plastic or rubber for a more comfortable grip. Despite these improvements, the wire basket still had inherent disadvantages. It was relatively heavy. The metal wires, even when plated, could eventually rust, especially at the weld points. The wire grid could snag delicate clothing, like nylon stockings, which were popular at the time. And perhaps most significantly, from a manufacturing and design perspective, wire was limited in its form and color. A wire basket was, by its nature, a metallic, grid-like object. The next great leap in shopping basket design would come not from mechanical engineering, but from materials science. The 1960s witnessed a boom in the development and commercialization of plastics. Polymers like polyethylene and polypropylene, byproducts of the petroleum industry, were becoming inexpensive, versatile, and suitable for a vast array of consumer and industrial applications. The technology of injection molding, a process where molten plastic is forced into a mold to create a precise shape, was also maturing rapidly. This combination of new materials and new manufacturing techniques opened up a world of possibilities for product designers, including those working on the humble shopping basket. The transition from wire to plastic was not instantaneous. It began in the mid to late 1960s and accelerated through the 1970s. The advantages of plastic were numerous and compelling. First, plastic was significantly lighter than steel. A plastic basket was easier for customers of all ages and strengths to carry, improving the overall shopping experience. Second, plastic would not rust. This was a major advantage in terms of durability and hygiene. Plastic baskets could be easily washed and sanitized without the fear of corrosion. Third, a molded plastic basket could have smooth, rounded surfaces. There were no sharp wire ends or rough weld points to snag clothing or scratch a customer's hands. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, injection molding allowed for a level of design freedom that was impossible with wire. Instead of being limited to a grid, designers could create solid or perforated surfaces, incorporate ergonomic features like molded grips, and reinforce stress points with extra material. The basket could be designed as a single, cohesive unit, rather than an assembly of individual wires. And finally, plastic could be colored. Pigments could be mixed into the plastic resin before molding, meaning the color was integral to the material, not just a coating. This opened the door for branding. Supermarkets could now order baskets in their signature corporate colors, reinforcing their brand identity from the moment a customer walked through the door. Let's take a moment to consider the injection molding process itself, as it is central to understanding the form of the modern shopping basket. The process begins with small pellets of a thermoplastic polymer, such as high-density polyethylene, or HDPE, a material known for its strength, flexibility, and resistance to impact and chemicals. These pellets are fed from a hopper into a heated barrel. Inside the barrel, a large rotating screw conveys the pellets forward. As the pellets travel along the screw, the combination of heat from the barrel's external heaters and the friction generated by the screw's motion causes the plastic to melt into a homogeneous, viscous liquid. Once enough molten plastic has accumulated at the front of the barrel, the screw acts like a plunger, injecting the material at high pressure into a custom-made mold. The mold itself is a marvel of precision engineering, typically made from hardened steel and consisting of two halves, the cavity and the core. The space between the cavity and the core defines the exact shape of the shopping basket. The molten plastic fills this space completely, capturing every detail, from the textured grip on the handle to the small holes that allow for drainage. After the injection phase, the mold is cooled, usually by circulating water through channels built into its walls. The cooling process solidifies the plastic, causing it to harden into the desired shape. Once the basket is sufficiently rigid, the mold opens and a system of ejector pins pushes the finished basket out of the mold. The entire cycle, from injection to ejection, can take less than a minute, allowing for the rapid, cost-effective mass production of thousands of identical baskets. This efficiency of production was a key factor in the widespread adoption of plastic baskets. The 1970s can be considered the golden age of the plastic shopping basket's standardization. During this decade, the design that is still familiar to us today truly took shape and became the dominant form in American retail. The archetypal basket of this era was rectangular, with generously rounded corners for safety and durability. The sides were steeply tapered, allowing for very deep and stable nesting, an evolution of the principle first developed for wire baskets. The body was often a solid color. Red, blue, green, and yellow were common choices, and featured a pattern of perforations or slots. These were not merely decorative. They reduced the amount of plastic needed, thereby lowering the weight and cost of the basket, and also allowed water to drain out if the baskets were stored outdoors or needed to be washed. The dual swinging handle design, perfected in the wire era, was translated seamlessly into plastic. Two separate plastic handles were molded and then attached to the top rim of the basket. The pivot mechanism was refined. Instead of a simple wire loop, the plastic handles often had a molded hole at their base, which would snap or be pinned onto a corresponding nub or axle, molded directly into the basket's rim. This created a smooth, reliable pivot. The handles themselves were designed to be more ergonomic than their wire predecessors, often with a flattened or slightly curved profile to better fit the human hand. Another key feature that became standardized during this period was the integration of branding directly into the basket's design. With injection molding, it was a simple matter to engrave the store's name or logo into the surface of the steel mold. This meant that every basket produced would have the store's branding permanently embossed or debossed on its side. This was a subtle but powerful form of advertising and brand reinforcement. The shopping basket was no longer just a functional tool. It was a part of the store's corporate identity. Key manufacturing companies rose to prominence during this era, driving the standardization forward. Companies like Rerig Pacific, which had its roots in logistics and material handling containers like milk crates, applied their expertise in industrial plastics to the retail sector. They conducted extensive research into the stresses a shopping basket endures, the weight of the items, the impacts from being dropped, the wear and tear on the handles. They used this data to refine their designs, adding reinforcing ribs to the bottom, thickening the plastic at the corners and handle pivots, and choosing polymer blends that offered the best combination of rigidity and impact resistance. Their engineering-focused approach helped to create a product that was not only functional and affordable, but also remarkably durable, capable of withstanding years of daily abuse in a busy retail environment. The result of this convergence of material science, manufacturing technology, and market demand was a highly optimized and standardized object. By the end of the 1970s, if you walked into a supermarket in California, a drugstore in Ohio, or a convenience store in Florida, you were very likely to encounter a shopping basket of a very similar design. A tapered, rectangular plastic body with two folding plastic handles. The color and the logo might be different, but the fundamental form and function were the same. The 1980s were a period not of radical reinvention, but of subtle refinement and specialization. The basic design of the plastic handbasket was now so successful and ubiquitous that there was little pressure to change it fundamentally. Instead, the focus shifted to incremental improvements in ergonomics, durability, and niche applications. Ergonomics became an area of increased focus. Designers looked for ways to make carrying a full basket even more comfortable. The handles were a key area of improvement. Simple, flat plastic handles were sometimes replaced with more sculpted designs that featured textured, non-slip grips. The shape might be contoured to fit the natural curve of a person's fingers. The pivot mechanism was also improved to be smoother and more durable, preventing the annoying squeaking or sticking that could develop in older designs. The overall balance of the basket was also considered, ensuring that it was stable and did not tilt awkwardly when carried. Materials science continued to advance. Plastic formulations were improved to be more resistant to ultraviolet light, which could make older plastics brittle and cause their colors to fade over time, a particular problem for stores that stored their basket stacks outside. New blends of polymers offered even greater impact resistance, reducing the likelihood of a basket cracking if it were dropped. The focus was on extending the service life of the basket, making it an even more cost-effective investment for retailers. This period also saw the rise of a significant design variation, the rolling basket. This innovation sought to bridge the gap between the traditional handbasket and the full-sized shopping cart. As convenience stores and smaller format grocery stores grew in popularity, retailers recognized a need for a container that was larger than a handbasket, but more maneuverable and space-efficient than a cart. The solution was to take the familiar form of the plastic basket and add two small wheels to one of the bottom edges and a long, telescoping handle to the opposite top edge. This hybrid design was a clever piece of engineering. A customer could carry it like a normal basket for a few items. But as it became heavier, they could extend the telescoping handle, often made of lightweight aluminum and similar in design to the handle on rolling luggage, and pull the basket behind them. The small, durable wheels, typically made of a hard polyurethane, allowed it to roll smoothly across the store's floor. The design presented a new stacking challenge. The wheels and the handle mechanism meant that a simple nesting stack was not always possible. Designers developed clever solutions, such as offsetting the wheels or designing the handles to retract fully, allowing the baskets to still be stacked in a relatively compact formation. The rolling basket did not replace the standard handbasket, but found its own niche, particularly in drugstores, liquor stores, and express sections of larger supermarkets, where customers might purchase a number of heavy items like bottles or canned goods. By 1990, the endpoint of our historical survey, the landscape of the commercial retail shopping basket in America was largely established in the form we know it today. The decades-long journey from a simple wicker tray to a highly engineered plastic tool was complete. The process had been a quiet one, driven not by grand pronouncements, but by the persistent, incremental pressures of practicality and commerce. The need for customer convenience in a self-service world demanded a container. The limitations of that container's capacity spurred the invention of the cart. The need for a smaller, more nimble option for quick trips solidified the role of the handbasket. The evolution of the handbasket's design can be seen as a series of problems and solutions. The problem of weight and fragility was solved by the move from wicker to wire. The problem of inefficient storage was solved by the tapered body and the revolutionary swinging handle. The problems of rust, weight, and snagging associated with wire were in turn solved by the adoption of injection-molded plastic. And the desire for greater comfort and brand identity was addressed through ergonomic refinements and integrated logos. Each step in this process was guided by the unseen hand of standardization. A successful design pioneered by one manufacturer would be quickly adopted and adapted by others. The laws of physics and economics dictated that a tapered nesting basket was superior to a non-nesting one. The efficiencies of mass production favored a single, optimized design over a multitude of variations. The retail industry itself was standardizing, with similar store layouts and aisle widths across the country, creating a uniform environment in which a standardized tool like the shopping basket could thrive. The story of the shopping basket is, in many ways, the story of modern retail in miniature. It reflects the shift from personal service to self-service, the embrace of new materials and manufacturing technologies, and the relentless pursuit of efficiency and customer convenience. It is an object born of observation, Sylvan Goldman watching his customers struggle with their small baskets, and perfected through decades of quiet, unglamorous engineering. It is a testament to the power of incremental improvement, the gradual refinement of a simple idea until it reaches a state of near-perfect utility. And so, the next time you find yourself entering a store and reaching for a shopping basket, take a moment to appreciate the history it holds. Feel the smooth, durable plastic, a material that replaced the splintered wood and rusting wire of the past. Notice the way the handles swing up to meet your hand, a simple, elegant solution to the complex problem of stackability. See how it nests perfectly with the baskets below it, a testament to the precise geometry of its tapered sides. You are holding an object that is the culmination of 50 years of thought, innovation, and standardization. It is a silent and dependable partner in the ritual of commerce, an invisible piece of history that, through its very perfection, has earned the right to be taken for granted. Its journey is a slow and methodical one, a quiet evolution that has shaped our everyday lives in ways we rarely, if ever, stop to consider. And in its calm, functional, and utterly predictable design, we can find a small measure of peace, a quiet order in a busy world.